We're finishing today's event with a panel presentation and discussion with the Pacific Whale Watch Association, who two important things. One, they've been a huge supporter of the symposium over the years. They help bring all of us together to have these discussions. And secondly, of course, they spend an awful lot of time on the water, observing the things that many of us only get to glimpse on a routine basis. And so we're going to start off, they're going to be telling us about their seasons this year, and then we're going to be leading a more general discussion. And I'll let Michael do more description.
Awesome. Okay. Good. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us. My name is Michael Harris. I'm the Executive Director of the Pacific Whale Watch Association. I also split my time as a contributing producer and wildlife specialist for ABC News. But the Pacific Whale Watch Association is made up of 36 companies in Washington, B.C. It breaks out to 19 Washington operators, 16 B.C. operators, and Victoria Clipper, which is kind of U.S.B.C. Last year in 2014, we conducted 13,562 trips. 2015, we're going to be over 14,000. We're taking out about 400,000 passengers a year on our boats in the fleet. This year is interesting because we agreed to take part in an economic study done by the University of Washington for the first time ever, a transboundary economic impact study. And the numbers that came back from William Byers, who's a esteemed economist at University of Washington, it's now being peer-reviewed in advance of publication, but we have 144 million regional economic impact annually in Washington, B.C. As they said, we are on the water a bunch. We are the eyes and ears on the water a lot of times here. And I am very excited. I've got some panelists here I want to introduce, but we have actually three panelists who had to cancel at the last minute. I don't know if you all know, but down in the U.S., the day after Thanksgiving is it's called Black Friday. And sadly, they came down and got stampeded and trampled, and it was really tragic. So sorry about that. No, but one of them is Mark Mallinson from Prince of Wales, and Mark is a captain and does contract research for DFO and works with the Center for Whale Research and contributes to Cascadia Research Collective down in Olympia, where I'm from. I'm from Seattle. And Mark has asked me to share some of his info, so I will be Mallard, as we call him. I gotta be careful calling him Mallard, though. Those of you know who Mark Mallinson is? Y'all know Mark? We call him Mallard, and unfortunately, one time the Victoria Times columnist referred to him as Captain Mark Mallard. And so we're careful who we say that to now. Anyway, so I'll be presenting some information from Captain Mallinson. But I want to briefly introduce a couple people here that we have as our panelists here. We have Casey Brant, don't call her Dr. Casey, but Casey Brant from Eagle Wing Tours in Victoria. And we have Joan Lopez from Vancouver Whale Watch. And where is that, Vancouver? Okay. But they are graciously going to share some sightings data with you all. We're going to kind of go step by step from some of the things that we've seen this year. It's been an incredible year for us. A lot of really interesting things, a lot of crazy things. I'll try to get through it as quickly as I can here. Right? Okay. I thought you were just agreeing with me. Right. Okay, yeah. Get through it quick. Okay. Where I come from, gray whales are now front page top fold news in the Seattle Times. This was from February. Does this say February? This is from February. We now have quite an interesting gray whale watching season, which up until, I believe, 1991, we didn't have any gray whales really to speak of that were regular. Now we've called them the Saratoga grays because they always show up every year in the same area, Saratoga Passage, kind of the south end of Whidbey Island, just north of the city of Seattle. And they are like clockwork. Cascadia Research Collective has said that have documented 42 individual whales using the area since 1990, with 11 of the grays seen multiple times since 1991. And we do misspell gray, by the way. We spell G-R-A-Y. Okay, and this is Patch. And the cool thing about Patch is every year, Patch has been documented down there. So he is like the regular of regulars. So this big old whale comes down here, hangs out, eats the ghost shrimp. They fill up their bellies, and then they get back on the migration and head on out. So we've been doing a lot of gray whale watching here. And again, this is Patch, one of the 11 whales that have been there, been seen in that area almost every year. So I'm going to scoot through here, guys. The biggest and most interesting, I think, thing that's going on here, and its particular interest in the U.S. media, is the over-the-top recovery of the humpback population in this area. I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion of that today, and we're going to hear some more in detail. But this is the humpback BCZ0131. I had to look at that. We call him gnarly, and he's only just recently become gnarly because in the catalog at Cascadia did not have the kind of the freaky fluke there. Looks like maybe an entanglement or maybe even a ship strike. But this is an example of whales that are coming in that we're just seeing, new whales that are populating, recolonizing this area. And I'm going to kind of this is Mark Mallison's graph data here on humpback whales. The most interesting thing is you'll see it's just growing and growing and growing. And the really crazy thing is that they're showing up in areas that we just can't imagine they'd show up in. I'm sure we have some Seattle people here. We're seeing them out off Seattle, Washington. You know, around Blake Island, some other places. We're seeing humpbacks in the Sound, and that's pretty interesting. But last year, Mark Mallison documented 47, I believe, unique individuals coming into the area. And he suspects this year it'll be probably over 50 or close to the number. So record number of humpbacks showing up in places they've haven't populated since really the cessation of commercial whaling here in 1966. I believe the numbers in 1966 on the, help me out, is it the northeastern Pacific humpback population were about 1,500 estimated in 1966. So in less than a half century, we have jumped right back up to, I think, a little over 21,000. So the numbers are huge. And again, coming into the Sound. Doing really unusual things. I mean, part of what we want to do is not just tell you about the numbers and the species we're seeing, but just sort of the anecdotal stuff that we're seeing on the water. And you'll get a lot of that from Casey and Joan. But the one thing about humpbacks, at least, I'm not a marine scientist, I'm a political scientist, I'm a marine scientist, I am not, but just as a layperson watching and seeing and hearing stories coming off the water, it just seems that these whales are not only recolonizing these areas again, but they seem very, very comfortable in those areas. They're staying longer, and some of the behaviors are really, really interesting. I've been in the Seattle area for over 30 years and never saw a humpback until recently. Never heard of males actually singing coming into the Sailor Sea. And so they're singing like Sinatra out there. It's pretty crazy. And, you know, we got Big Mama coming in. What was it, about 10 years ago? Big Mama started coming in. She was one of the first ones in that we started seeing regularly. She started bringing in her calf. How many calves now? I think she's brought in 4 or 5 calves now over the years. So they're not just here, they're here to stay. They're here to be, they seem very comfortable, providing just unbelievable research, but also whale watching opportunities. We love being able to get out there and look at a different species. You know, we're so orca country in the Sailor Sea. And I guess it takes some of the pressure off. So we love being able to see humpbacks, and they're such a spectacular animal. So that's been a lot of fun. So just scoot through here. And again, this is Mark's anecdotal observations here, but also numeric observations. 40 plus unique individuals in 2014. More unique individuals expected in 2015, recolonizing new areas. Staying longer. I mean, we're seeing them between March and December. My guess is maybe past that. So no hurry to get back on that migration. So skipping through. Okay, so I'm going to present a little bit of Mark Mallison stuff here on transients, big whales, what all of you call exotics, which are what, the CAs, the outer coastals, right? that Brian, Dave Bain? Outer Coastals, right? Okay, right. Very interesting sightings from our fleet and from our crews on the water. This one is U-39, showed up in June, shadowing some intercoastal tees, transients. But yeah, so we're starting to see some very, very interesting and unusual transient orcas out there, which again, I don't know if it's just a term in the whale watch community, but they're referred to as the exotics. So very unusual animals we're seeing out there. This is a very broad graph that I'm not going to go into every single color code and every part of this graph, but this is done. I will speak over this though and tell you that part of what we endeavored to do a few years back, this is my 4th year as executive director of the Pacific Whale Watch Association, and it immediately occurred to me that we were sitting on some pretty interesting and valuable data sets that we just weren't aggregating. And so I thought, well, gosh, let's start pulling our resources together, and let's start aggregating these sightings, and let's start really not just aggregating the sightings, but really make them credible. Really try to get some credible sightings data here. Not like, well, I may have seen some orcas, it could have been some dolls, I'm not sure, but really try to get some good stuff that puts us in a position where we can be contributing to conservation science. And I think that's the greatest goal of the association. I think we're getting to that point. We got a ways to go, but I think we're getting to the point where we really are seen as contributors to conservation science. So what you're seeing here is we've worked with the Center for Whale Research and someone named Jane Kogan, who is working with Ken Balcom and Deb Giles, the new research director, in aggregating these sightings data. And what you see is largely from our aggregated sightings from the 36 companies of Pacific Whale Watch Association and our fleet of some, I think, 85 boats in the province and the state. So we're getting to that point. So I wanted to show you a little bit of this. And we're going to move on here to, this is my favorite part, baby orcas. Okay. We're all gaga down in Washington State in the U.S. on baby orcas, and I'm guessing you guys are all the same way up here. We had a period of time where, and I can speak to this as a person who lives in Puget Sound. Middle of December when we lost a J-pod whale when she was, I believe she had an infection while giving birth. There were a lot of people who said, that's it, man. That's game over for southern residents. You know, we not only lost, we dipped down to 77 animals in the population. When I was part of the petitioning group that got them listed in 2000, well, got the court victory, petition in 2001 or 2002, won the court victory in 2003 or 4, got them listed in 2005. We're at 78 animals. So after 10 years and a little under $17 million US from the ESA money, we were -1. That's not recovery. That's going backwards. And we had a lot of people who were very, very pessimistic. And then the Southerns, and particularly J-Pod, did what they always did, and they surprised the hell out of us. And they started having babies. And then Els came in. So I'm going to walk you through little baby pictures. It's like almost showing pictures of my kids or something. But this is the coolest shot, I think. And this comes from Clint Rivers, who is a colleague of Casey's at Eagle Wing. And I'm telling you, and I can tell you as a person who does media and for the association and monitors it internationally, this picture didn't just go out to millions or even tens of millions. It went out to hundreds of millions of people worldwide. This was a global reach on this one shot. This little belly flop shot, J50. And I love that shot. In fact, I framed that and it's hanging in my house right now. Anyway, so that's J50. J50 was, and this is the first of a class that we call in the whale watch community, the class of 2015. So even though J50 was thought to be born on December 30th, class of 2015. All right, let's roll through. And there's J51, another shot from another colleague of Casey's. That's all they have is like great photographers at Eagle Wing. But this is from Valerie Shore. And this is J51 with J27. How old is J27? Okay, quick, somebody. How old is J27? How much? 24. 24-year-old male. I love that shot. That's very, very cool. So that's J51. Moving right along. L121. So L started doing a little bit of the lifting, right? Because the J's were doing all the heavy lifting on this. So L's came through, had a baby February, and then in March we had J52. And all of these shots, with the exception of the last one, were all taken from very long lenses from whale watch operators and marine scientists who are working on our boats. So this is a J52. Here we go, L pod again. Here we go, L's. Where's K pod, by the way? Gosh, anyway. Then we've got J53. We got lots of baby action in the southern residents. And, you know, and you've all seen the media. I will tell you that when J53 was born, there's a company I work with called Meltwater, and they've got, I believe, 28 offices in, I think, 28 different countries around the world, and they claim to monitor every single country on the planet that has media. I don't know if that's true or not, but they said they contacted me, and they're Quebec-based, and they contacted me and they said, we just want you to, I mean, they, out of the blue, contacted us, said, we just want you to know that J53 story, our data is showing that in the first few days, it went out to 331 million people worldwide. Those are crazy numbers. People love baby orcas. So our job, just like with every kind of sustainable wildlife viewing, is, you know, touch that Cousteau thing, get them to see it, experience, know about these whales, love them, protect them. And every single one of those steps are important. So, sure, we're nowhere out of the woods. We've got a lot of problems with southern residents. We're a long way from recovery. But we've got some people very excited around the planet about how our 3 pods are doing in the southern residents. So that's really cool. So I'm all about sending the baby pictures out and getting people excited. All right, moving around. Unusual sightings. Now this again is from Mark Mallinson. And we had a little bit of northern resident action through here not long ago. Came through here. The picture you're seeing is G38, G59, G60. G-Clan coming through here. Mark says we had a portion of G-Clan on November 5th near Race Rocks, which is not too far from Victoria. Crazy things happen at Race Rocks, by the way. And he says this is the 3rd time I've had members of G-Clan on these inside waters since 1999. Very cool, very interesting. A lot of confusion initially. I monitor, we have our sighting network involves encrypted radios, but also a private Facebook group. And so we have sightings coming from off the water. And I loved watching sort of the peppering of sightings coming off on this one going, basically, who the hell is this? You know, nobody knew originally, and then boom, we started figuring it out. These are northerns coming through here. So really interesting, exciting event this month. Here is the one that I really, really dig because my boat was the one who found this whale. In September 3rd, we have a whale watch boat in our fleet that I was partnered on called the Chilkat Express, departing out of Seattle Edmonds, so one of the southernmost of the 36 operators. And I started getting, when we came across this whale that nobody knew what it was. The blow was very unique. It was not a humpback. I think there was some discussion it might be a beaked whale, and I was like, no, too big for a beaked. We determined working with John Stern from San Francisco State University. I sent stuff to Robin Baird. Is Robin here, by the way? Robin Baird in Cascadia. And then we determined it's a fin whale. And as I said in the media, it was like finding a brontosaurus in your backyard. The 2nd largest animal ever to live on the planet. And here we had it in the confines of Puget Sound. And this is important because we have not seen a fin whale, a live fin whale that wasn't, dead on the bow of an incoming freighter since 1930, this far south. Very, very interesting. This same whale was spotted a few years back by Mark Mallinson. There were a couple fins that were spotted a while back. I'm sure we've got some folks here, Graham and other people who can give us more data on that. But as far as Puget Sound goes, city of, our little inland waters of Washington State, this is big news. This is really big news. And again, this also went out internationally. reached millions of people very interested in this whale. We are thinking, I think some people are calling, I think we're trying to figure out what to call him. There was a battle to call him either Andre the Giant, you know, which was my choice because I love Andre the Giant, God rest his big soul, and, or Finnegan. So I think we're landing on Finnegan. You know, like, hey, there's that Finnegan. Anyway. I didn't name him, all right. Don't kill the messenger. But it's really, really interesting. And so we've got a fin whale now, and this guy hung out a good part of the fall. So again, he arrived September 3rd and stayed for a long, long time, was seen lunge feeding, seen doing all sorts of, you know, healthy, normal whale things. And so that was an interesting sighting. And again, big news, that's the NBC affiliate. No, that's the Associated Press piece. Very, very interesting. And that's Mark's picture of the same whale. Giant whale. I mean, I wish you could see, because it was often seen with minkies, and it made minkies look like little harbor porpoises. It's a big whale, very big whale. And again, I think what's the total length of this thing if it grows to full length? What, 85 feet? A massive whale. And the other marine mammal that we don't talk about that much, but we're starting to see sea otters in here, which is really, really interesting, considering the fact that we extirpated them long, long time ago. The fur trade did, actually, I think in the 1920s in Washington State, BC, and Oregon. I think in 1969, I did a film on this once, actually. I think in 1969, there was a reintroduction attempt made on the Washington coast. They brought down some otters from the Aleutian Islands. I'm trying to think what island was it, but they were doing, interestingly, they were doing some atomic testing. They were setting off atomic bombs up there, and they thought, we'll save some of these otters, and brought them down. The first attempt was miserably a failure. The second attempt stuck. I think they brought down maybe 50 or some animals in 1970. Now we're well over 700 just off Washington State. So we got sea otters again. This was off of around Race Rocks, East Sook. So same area where, you know, we see a lot of very unusual sightings around there. So we see our sea otter. And, you know, and this is the last part of my thing, and this doesn't have to do with, it doesn't, but this isn't a sighting so much as we were contacted by Paul Cottrell. Is Paul here? Where's Paul from DFO? Did he leave? I didn't authorize that. Okay. Anyway, so Paul contacted the Whale Watch Association and said, we have an issue here. There's a shot of a T-77A transient whale, pretty entangled in a rope and a float. You know, we don't often see orcas entangled, you know, but this one was. I know we had that northern resident that got into a fishing net up north, and McKay's whale watching assisted in getting that guy out. But we had, you know, he called up and he said, can you basically do an APB? Can you just alert everyone and let's find this whale? And it's like, you bet. So we did it. And we had one operator in particular who said, look, I don't have any paid passengers, but I love this whale. This is one very popular orca. In fact, one of the headlines says, popular orca found with rope and thing. Because this whale, T-77A and T-49C, even to the best scientists out there, look pretty close. They're indiscernible. They really are. Same dorsal, same kind of notches, same saddle. You know, and what's worse, I think they were kind of messing with us over the years because they hang out together all the time. So you got these two whales that just keep showing up side by side and just playing with us, right? Because we can't tell who it is. So anyway, and they're very social. Both of them became very popular. This is one of our popular transients. And so Captain Hobbs Buchanan from the San Juan Island Whale and Wildlife Tours, San Juan Island, said, hey, you know what? I don't have any paid passengers, but I'm going to just search and search and search, and I'm going to send my guy. I'm going to pay for everything. We're going to find this bloody whale. He's from England. We're going to find this bloody whale, and we're going to find him. Great. So he did, and he ran for several days until his boat broke down and had to be towed in. But we had the rest of the fleet out there looking, some of them with passengers, some without. And the nice thing is we're able to close the loop on this 3 weeks later. On November 4th was when the photo was taken with the rope with the entanglement. On the 23rd this week, we got some photos from Captain Jim Maya from Maya's Legacy Whale Watching, free and clear. So that's good news. That doesn't always happen in the cetacean world where entanglements end up being a happy ending. So very excited about that. Yeah, so that's one thing, and good thing we're out there. I like to think it is. So moving on, nothing to do with whales, but it has to do with, as I have said repeatedly, you know, we have developed over the last several years a culture of not just stewardship, I think, of the animals out there, but for each other. It's interesting, we're unique as a whale watching industry as opposed to many other places in the world where we really do look at and encourage, I look at it as a prerequisite for hiring. How much emergency training have our crews been involved in? And what's their culture of emergency training? Are they prepared, not just trained, but are they prepared to be first responders if the need arises? Because we have it all the time. Just this year, this happened in September, where we had a diver, we heard a distress call, a mayday, a distress call, that a diver had the bends and was hyperthermic and was fading fast. We happened to have on one of our boats in the nearby area, one of our captains for Outer Island expeditions works part-time for fire and rescue on Orcas Island. So he immediately went to action. The passengers on board, they were given a choice. We could drop you off or you can stay with us. They all said, we want to stay, we want to help. Every passenger dropped what they're doing and helped. There happened to be a nurse on board, and we got that. We were able to respond, get that person back to shore, get that person airlifted from Orcas Island to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, and being treated within 45 minutes. And it probably saved his life. So that happened in September. And then this happened last week. One of our drivers, one of our drivers actually plucked 9 people out of the water not long ago off of Victoria. And look at that water, look at the rope. That's springtide whale watching. And that's one of our captains who is a diver himself, but also trained in emergency response. Worked with the rescue teams that came out, and every one of those people, all 9 people, half of them were in the water when they got there. With the exception of just mild hypothermia, they all made it. And I bring that up because we all know what happened in Tofino, and I think we have some Tofino people here, right? Anybody from Tofino? So we had some Tofino people here. We had a whale watch boat go down, and it's still being investigated off Tofino, and sadly we had 5 UK nationals and 1 Australian national die. And since whale watching emerged in this region, in BC and Washington in the mid-70s, since our association has been an association since 1991, we haven't really even had an injury in the association. You know, somebody scraping their knee if they slip on a deck. We've never had an incident like this. This operator is not part of our association. It's not an area of operations for us, but they're part of our whale watching community. And anyway, so I just wanted to take a moment here and just remember everybody who was impacted by this and the entire community of Tofino. We have naturalists, we have captains, we have people who do work out there, who do know people out there. And it was just quite sad. And we're going to learn a lot from it. And we're watching the investigation very closely. So anyway, that's my thing. So now I want to introduce, are you ready, Casey? There you go. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Casey Brant from Eagle Wing.
I haven't done anything yet. So I work in the whale watching industry.
It's directional.
Used to yelling at people.
As long as you yell this direction, you're fine.
Okay, so I've worked in the whale watching industry for about 13 years, but actually my day job, I'm a geochemist, so it's an interesting perspective for me to come to these kind of events because I am a scientist and I can relate to data being presented, but I am not a marine mammal scientist. And for this presentation, I am here speaking just as a whale watcher, as a naturalist, as a captain. One thing I am not, however, is a photographer. So I'm going to share some pretty pictures of whales, and I'm going to just talk about some of the more interesting trends and observations we've seen this past season. And I'm going to share pictures that my colleagues take. One of them, Clint, took that picture there. Val Shore, some of you probably know Val. That's one of her pictures. Clint Rivers, another one of our photographers. And our photographers spend a lot of time investing in their skills, and some of them also spend a lot of time investing in their equipment. So that's Clint Rivers. And that was the camera he used to take that little picture of J50 leaping out of the water. And I was actually standing behind him that day. And I don't think that's his biggest camera. And this is on our boat one day. Those are the crew cameras. However, like I said, these are not my photos. This is my camera. So, interesting sighting. So humpbacks. Michael mentioned the return of humpback whales to the area. That's great for us as whale watchers. We love to see humpback whales out there. We see a lot of them doing this, breathing, fluking. That's an individual known as monarch, pretty easy to recognize. So while we're out there, we usually try to identify animals if we can. A lot of times I think it's mostly just for our own amusement, but then we do usually take down our data and pass it on to those who are interested. And for me, what's really interesting about humpback whales recolonizing the area, the one we call imaginatively split fin, that one's split fluke, is as we see humpback whales recolonizing the area, I think there's a lot of interesting patterns. I think we don't know a lot about the way they use the area, because when they used to be common in the Salish Sea, nobody cared about them. No one was studying them. People were only interested in hunting them. So now that we're coming back, we're seeing these kind of trends in a very just observations that we'll see the same individuals using the same areas, so high site fidelity. And those areas will kind of shift throughout the summer. So there'll be a certain location that for a week or so of the summer, every day you can go out and you can kind of see who's there, and you can, even when you see the blow, you can guess which individual it's going to be. And then that kind of shifts. And one thing we don't see a lot of is, let's say, feeding behavior. We know they're there feeding. We know they're coming in, in the same area for days. They must be feeding, but we don't always see lunging at the surface. We don't see bubble net feeding. We don't see flick feeding. We just know that they must be feeding. They must be feeding lower in the water column. And I don't think we really understand the different techniques they use in this area. One thing I did see this summer for the first time ever was Big Mama, BCY 0324. I saw her on just one day coming straight up in the water column, coming straight out of the water, mouth gaping open, like they do when they're bubble net feeding. And that was in the Strait of Georgia, just on one occasion. So one whale using different feeding techniques. And more fluking. And sometimes they do this. And that is a passenger photo, and I really wouldn't want to be any closer. That was alarming. And this is what happens when you've got that really big lens. Okay, so big killer whales. So for me, over the years that I've been doing this, you can really see an increase in the number of sightings of big killer whales, and we're seeing more social behaviors, bigger groups of whales. That's my impression. And some of the behaviors that we see, let's go back a step. When we take passengers out and we know we're going to be seeing Bigg's killer whales, often kind of give them a bit of a talk to lower their expectations a little bit. We say, these whales are usually in stealth mode. They're hunting. They're trying to be quiet. They're going to go for longer dives. They might zigzag a bit. They're not going to be jumping and frolicking. If we're really lucky, we might see a hunt, maybe, but oftentimes they're not that spectacular. But sometimes they are. So sometimes we do see hunting here. So there's a little, there's a harbor seal tucked in between the two whales there. That probably didn't end well. There's another one. This definitely didn't end well. Sometimes we see that. There's a blood bubble there. And sometimes hunting behavior is followed by play behavior. So often after there's been a kill, there'll be a time they just kind of take a bit of time out, they rest, they go in circles, they continue feeding, they relax a bit. They do things like this. That's the Center for Whale Research boat just behind them. And sometimes feeding time becomes playtime. So perhaps a bit of a training going on here. And then another behavior I saw this summer was something I like to think of as just Bigg's killer whales going around being badass thugs. So that's a very agitated group of stellar sea lions. And what happened was a group of Bigg's killer whales, the T65A is one of the groups that we see most often. They were cruising around, and for whatever reason, they just charged into the middle of this group of stellar sea lions. And they weren't hunting, we didn't see anything go on, they didn't linger, they just went right into the middle of them, stirred them all up, got them all very, very agitated, and continued on. And if that wasn't enough, what they did was proceeded to cruise around. This was up by Spiden Island, and they just cruised around and terrorized every poor harbor seal or other marine mammal they could find. And again, no kills. They just, I don't know what they're doing. But another interesting thing they did this day is we could watch them going along the shoreline, and we could see a couple of them coming together and surfacing just before one of these seals on the rocks. And you could see them creating a little bit of a wave. And I don't know that any of those waves washed the seals off the rocks, or even if it wasn't intentional, but it was certainly reminiscent of when you see those videos of killer whales in Antarctica washing seals off icebergs. That was a different kind of sighting. The twins Michael talked about. And other things we take note of, which are just kind of interesting to go in the back of our mind is, that's different. This is a group of transients known as the T60s, and that's the family group in the foreground, mom and her offspring, and the one trailing behind is one known as T2B, who travels with the T60s. But it's really interesting in that they've been together for I'm not sure how long. They travel together, they hunt together, they interact, but she's always just a little bit behind. So she's with them, but she's not part of them. So just an interesting observation. And that's my photo. But this photo I thought was worth sharing and worth even trying to take because this was a really unusual occurrence in my history of all the years been whale watching. We're just sitting quietly watching transient killer whales, and I believe this is the T36B. And a group of female and her two young. There were some others in the area. And one of them came up to the surface, a little spy hop, looked around, went down. And then we could see the group of them at the surface coming towards us, and we weren't quite sure what they were doing. And then as we got closer, we saw this, which is an even worse photo. But if you squint, and if you use your imagination, in the center there's a little harbor porpoise. It's a dead harbor porpoise. And I didn't get the picture of the whales and the harbor porpoise in the same shot together, but we realized what they were doing is there was these three Bigg's killer whales, and they had this harbor porpoise, and the three of them were moving along the surface very gently cradling it and keeping it at the surface. And they brought it over to my boat. And once they got closer, I almost thought they were going to give it to us. But when they got very close, they dove underwater. One of them kind of grabbed it and brought it with her. They went under the boat and came up, and then they went under the boat again, and then they carried on, and we were just sitting shut down going. So most of the time when we see these whales, our goal is not to be, not to interact with them, to just passively watch, to let them do their thing, to give them space. But sometimes there are these interactions. I don't know that's, I'm not going to say that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it did happen, and that was quite unusual in my experience. And that I forgot to talk about for the humpback whales. We do sometimes have humpback whales that take an interest in boats, and we call that mugging. So when the first time that happened that I heard of was, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, and it's a bit concerning. Whenever you have a large mammal in close proximity to people, that's potentially a bad situation. And I did hear and experience that a few times this summer, but it was my impression that it was not an increasing phenomenon. So I think that's a good thing at this time. Okay, and finally, resident killer whales. So lots of resident killer whales, lots of babies. Babies are lots of fun. So all kinds of baby shots, residents, fly hopping, breaching, cartwheel. And the interesting thing about the residents this year is that they're continuing on this trend of we're not seeing all of J pod together. Jays are breaking off into 2 or 3 groups. J's and K's are mixing and matching, whereas they also always be separate. The J16's a group that has 2 babies in it. They're often doing their own thing entirely. And this year, L pod, L's range the furthest. They spend the least time, but this summer, we didn't even see the L's until about halfway through the summer. So they were coming into the Strait of Juan de Fuca and then turning around and going back out, and coming in and going out. So we didn't see them until much later. But yeah, just there's just these sort of things that happen over time that aren't documented in a formal academic sense, but sometimes I think maybe there should be, or maybe there's some ideas in there or some things that might be future research projects for somebody. The end.
Well, Casey is being very, very humble. She actually she's more than a naturalist. She's going to hate when I say this, but she got her PhD last year, right? University of Victoria?
In
Geochemistry, sorry. Anyway, so you don't have to call her Dr. Casey. All right, so now I'd like to introduce Joan Lopez. Joan is a senior naturalist, has been doing this for a long, long time for Vancouver Whale Watch out of the lovely village of Steveston. And I think that's where Godzilla came once in the movie.
Correct.
Yeah, so be careful of Godzilla if you're in the village of Steveston. So,
Back, forward.
Joan Lopez.
It seems to be
it's-
moving
oh,
on
it's
its
on its own.
Yeah. Can we do that so it doesn't do that?
I will try.
Sorry, but I'm old school with these things, so instead of bringing a PowerPoint, I brought a slideshow. And apparently that isn't really happy with the technology here, so Rob's going to be helping me out a little bit here. So unfortunately, being the last one on the panel, I am going to be overlapping a little bit with what has been said already, but bear with me. There's a lot of pictures, but I'm going to go through them actually pretty quickly here for you. Humpbacks. A decade ago, we didn't see them in Georgia Strait. If there was a humpback, it was a big deal. We got the office staff on the boat to go out and see it. Now humpbacks are definitely back in the area. A little talk about Big Mama. There she is. And here she is actually, with kelp on her back, she was foraging at the surface, kind of open mouth skimming underneath that kelp. So a unique behavior, but as Casey said, I actually have seen Big Mama solo bubble net feeding. So she is a very, I think, a smart whale, very skilled whale, very adaptive whale. She can also be a very active whale. So this is her. Some of you might recognize that's Georgia Strait with the Delta Port in the background, and there's Vancouver in the background. So this is a between calves year. Maybe she's pregnant right now, I don't know, but she can still pull off those moves. Oh, it's like the remote. How do I just forward on these buttons? Okay, that might work better. And there she is showing off her beautiful pectoral flippers as well. So another whale that, Windy, okay, I've given up calling it anything else. Windy, again, early in the season, we saw this whale and then gone. But Windy has been a regular in the area now for about 3 to 4 years. It's one of those muggers, but not so much of that behavior this year. I think never, if there's another humpback in the vicinity. It doesn't seem to have the least interest, only interest in boats if it's the only whale there, and that doesn't always happen. Another whale that really common around the area, commonly seen, and that split fin, that's the whale that's on the front. It has that beautifully split up dorsal fin, not a good thing, but highly recognizable. Now, in other years, this whale associated almost always with split fluke, which Casey showed you that picture. But this year, there's the fluke shot for split fin. This year, this was the whale of choice for about 3 to 4 weeks. They were found in Georgia Strait near Active Pass, not every day, but frequently over that time. This is CS280 from the Clayoquot Sound catalog. So more becomes apparent later. With these catalogs, Windy has 2 different numbers depending on the catalog. It would be so nice to see those catalogs somehow merged, because right now we look in 4 different places to try to identify humpback whales. This is another Clayoquot Sound whale that was also in the area this year. The only one whale brought a calf back into Georgia Strait this year, and that was Killer. As we know her down south, she's known as Heather. I think it's because that little H on the side. Look carefully in the left fluke. Can you guys see the killer whale there? Let your inner child come out. I love how MERS has many of the humpback whales named, that's the Marine Education Research Society, by the school children in their area. So very often we do use their names because they're quite creative and quite fun to work with. So this was the calf from this year for Killer. You can see a lot of milky areas on it. So the problem often with identifying who the mother, or sorry, who that calf is in future years is that that fluke is going to change. So, for example, split fin apparently is Big Mama's offspring. Now, how do we know that? It's probably the damage to the dorsal fin. This one, I don't know if that barnacle is going to stay, but right now it has a barnacle right at the tip of the dorsal fin. Probably won't, but wouldn't that be lovely to re-identify that calf? Stripe. There's another one that we haven't actually seen in Georgia Strait before, but Stripe spent a little bit of time with us as well this year. Re-identifying or identifying new whales, if you like, a little bit of a problematic thing. This humpback whale was one of 3, apparently, that spent time in Saanich Inlet this summer. It's probably a young one. I look at that fluke. How identifiable should that be with that big black spot? Can't find it in any catalogs. You can still see a little milkiness around the edge of the fluke. So perhaps this is a youngster and it's not just, it just doesn't look the same as it used to as a baby. But it's very active. A little spy hopping action. And here, normally I don't like to show other people's boats, but I couldn't do this any other way. This whale exhibited a behavior that I have never seen a humpback whale do before, and that was the butterfly. So you can see how far those pectoral flippers are stretched out. I don't know the meaning of it. I don't know the purpose of it, but there were sort of repeated butterfly strokes and kind of, I'd say, a unique behavior for sure. Some still to be identified. Okay, I say that is a problem. Catalogs aren't merged. Sometimes, particularly with these mostly black flukes, it's difficult to always have a good shot that you can identify with. So this appears to be another one that's new in our area. And that's the end of me for humpback. So I'm going to need Rob's help again because, like I say, I did an old school slideshow way. And so we'll be switching to bigs or transient killer whales as the next talk. We're going to run through some of this, like I say, quite quickly because actually it's a bit of a repeat from what Casey did. And I do have a lot of pictures. So it'll be pretty picture, pretty picture, pretty picture. So yeah, transients is usually how we start our season. I still call them transients. This one, the expropriated picture, T65A, one of our regulars at the beginning of the season. There she is with last year's calf. There she is again, surrounded by seagulls. You can expect or can imagine what happened there, right off of East Point. Of course, they were feeding. She is a super mom. She's a super hunter, and that's her son, new Nick in the fin there. She is super social. This whale, we almost always see her in the company of another transient killer whale female with young. So she spent some time with her sister this year and then moved on to other transient families. But she's almost always in the company of another transient group. They're her kids with the 36A kids. Sorry, 37A kids. T123s are another group that we see frequently in the spring and then unlikely to see them again throughout the year. 123A here, this is an adoptable whale, by the way. The 123As are adoptable. That's Sydney. Had a satellite tag at one time, and dorsal fin seems to be a little bit different looking now. The skin on it. You can see even the local police like to watch whales. And there's his mom, Sydney, and little sister, for those of you who care, little sister, Lucky, just surfacing. Transient killer whales sometimes are very social. There's a nice big group of them up by Entrance Island one day, some great activity. I put in this picture, it's a great little breach shot, fluke up, but more than anything, I put that in there to show you what kind of a distortion you can get with zoom lenses. All my photos are taken with a zoom lens. They've all been cropped. You get this terrible distortion. So that whale looks like it's going to land on another one. Really? Oh, okay. All right, pretty pictures, pretty pictures, pretty pictures. We'll just wrap right through these then. Sorry, guys, I thought I was going to be covering about 8 minutes. Another whale with the tag T100C. He's only 13 years old, but you can see the satellite tag in him there. Lots of calves. T2Cs visited us this year. This whale possibly has scoliosis, but as he's growing, that fin is becoming very interesting and very, very identifiable. There's the twins. They almost indistinguishable. Won't go into the details. Other people have talked about them. That's T77A and 49C. Okay. Let me just, so what you're looking at is pictures of whales socializing after a kill. Let me just wrap this one. Just some pretty pictures there for you at the end. And I had one little audio clip here. Help me with the audio clip, Rob. So I was telling you, there's these, sometimes we get these big gatherings of transient killer whales where you could get like maybe 15 to 25 whales at a time. I think you get the idea that where we usually, transient killer whales are silent, they're stealthy, not in a social group like that. All right, I'll just...
You're out of time.
Okay. Apparently I'm out of time. So I think everyone else is, I was hoping to tell you about some associations with the southern resident killer whales, but come and ask if you would like to know about those.
Thank you, Joan.
You're welcome.
All right. And I got, okay, yeah, very quickly. I just got to say very quickly, for those of you who are really into alphanumerics and don't like these adoptive names, Windy, the origin of that name was Windy was known to be a flatulating whale. So whenever they'd come into an area and you smell that, everyone knows it's windy, right? So anyway, there you go. Anyway, so we got just a couple minutes. Sorry we ran long. I was talking for Mark Mallinson, and you know how he talks all the time. So we do have some question and answer time. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, one of the twins. And that would be T77. Yeah, yeah, and the question is, the whale that had the entanglement, was this one of the twins of the transients? And the answer is yes. This would be T77A, and the other twin is T49C. But yeah, yeah, one of the twins was tangled. Yes. So, other questions? Yes. I mean, there's some other people here from Seattle. Dave Baines from Seattle, I know. I haven't seen a humpback whale that far south, 30, 32 years. Long time, the whole time I've been out here. So it's very unusual. Yeah, so, yeah, in fact, they're coming and they're staying, and it's interesting to see Elliott Bay and see these big buildings and see a breaching humpback right out there. It's crazy. Yeah, so. Yeah, yeah, and the question is, why don't you come up to the mic? Come up, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the question was interaction between northern and southern residents. So I can only talk about this anecdotally because I didn't see it, but it kind of went all over our network. I presume you're talking about the incident where the southern residents had gone up north? Yeah, what I was going to talk about was sort of some of the relationships between some of the individual whales themselves. But there was an instance some of you may have heard about this year where the southern residents were actually right up north. They were in Johnstone Strait. At one point, there was a pod of northern residents that was behind them to the south. And where they both had been fairly vocal, all of a sudden they both fell silent. It's almost like they suddenly knew each other was there. And the southern residents, it was some J-pod whales, or I think all of J-pod up there, stayed for several days in that area, and after they came back, that was when J53 was first seen. So presumably, that birth happened up in northern resident territory.
Yes. When do you want to jump? I can.
I'll jump on that one. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, repeat the question about minkies.
Yeah, the question was about minke whales. The sightings data that Michael showed suggested that we didn't see as many this year as opposed to previous years. So for myself personally, we saw very few minke whales this year, but that is because primarily, if we can, we will work sort of from the northern San Juan Islands northward, and often the minkies are sighted south of San Juan Island. But even in that more northern area, potentially we should see minke whales in some of those zones, and they were quite absent this year, and that I don't know if that's that they were just more undercover because of the number of transient killer whales in the area. That's possible.
Well, and I can say that my boat operated out of Edmonds in Seattle, so we were going by Smith Island all the time, and there were minkies almost every day out there around Smith Island, which is sort of North Puget Sound, around the fin whale. We had the fin whale Finnegan with the minke whale, the minke whales out there. So, yeah. Other questions? Any of the what? Oh, the genders, yes, yes, I can rattle it off, I think, here. Not enough females, I know that. The question is, what is the gender makeup of the 6 calves in southern residents? And we had J50 is a female, and the rest are boys, and there's one that is not sexed yet, right? 53 is not sexed. So we've got 1 female, 4 males, and 1 we don't know yet. We want females. Sorry. So, anyway, any other questions? And I have to speak up in defense of the minke whale. I love minke whales. Yeah, you know, I got to say though, the funny thing is, I wasn't on the boat, but my boat came back once and they said, yeah, we had to give out vouchers. You know, the guaranteed whales. We had to give out vouchers to our crew. I was, whoa, didn't you see any? Oh, we just saw a minke. Like, what? What is that? Chopped liver? You know, so, yeah, I love my minkies. Yeah, love the minkies. So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for having us. Really, this is wonderful. This is our 3rd year doing this, and we just really look forward to it every year. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So just final wrap up. Wanted to start just by thanking a few people. This has gotten bigger and bigger each year, and a lot more work as a result from what used to be just it's still grassroots, but taking more of the roots times. Pamela Rosenbaum in particular for helping with registrations. Marcus came in last night to help us figure out how to stream this. He's sitting down here, brought in more technology. And I think we're going to try this in future years to let the entire world that wants to watch take part in this. So thanks very much, Marcus. And that was very important too, is Rob, who each year comes and he just keeps this thing running, and he brought in more laptops and things because we had wires going everywhere. And he pulled it again. Thanks very much, Rob. And I think the other people I'm thanking are not in the room at all, but maybe you're on there on that camera. David Rosen, who was my alternate voice today. Mariana, Aaron, Monique, helped at the front desk. And if I've forgotten anybody, thank you very much. It's great to see everybody here each year. It's great to see the community people getting bigger and bigger each year, too.
You forgot one person.
Oh.
Here for Andy.
Yeah, thank you. Please mark your calendars right now. We're scheduled for November 26, 2016. So back here in this room, bigger and better. Thanks very much. There is pizza and beer. Beer can be purchased. Pizza was already purchased. If you want to hang around to chat a bit more. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next year.